electricity put in those at that time, but that way, if someone at a later date comes back and they decide to bury electric, then they can utilize those conduits without tearing up our streets.
What about, was any fiber buried?
We won't be burying minimal fiber, but the fiber can utilize the same conduit that's under.
I would like to address that.
Yeah, please.
So just last week had a conversation with the owner of Total High Speed. And you may or may not know, but Total High Speed is a local company in Nixa that had recently, in the past few years, received quite a bit of federal funding to implement rural broadband, which is obviously a big deal. Trying to understand really what our shortcomings might be in the central business district, at least in this area right here. The main thing is conduit. And so when the public works director gets back, I don't know where we're at with that, but it's about a 2-inch conduit, and it sounds like they've already thought of this. We've obviously had conversations about it. I'm putting as much conduit as you can in the ground to be able to accommodate future digital fiber or whatever, just to make as much. You've got fiber in the downtown. It is above your head. It's not in the ground, but we will be looking at that and talking about that a little bit more. That if we do have a trench open, if the opportunity presents itself to be able to put conduit in the ground and just identify it, put it in our GIS system, leave it there. The question is, and we will be meeting with them, what has to come out of the ground? Like there can be conduit in the ground, but how does fiber, what do they need? Do they need a pedestal? Where do they got to go in? What's the point of entry? So we are looking at that, and we're trying to just get that ready. There are some companies that won't use our conduit. We've done this, we've had this conversation for a long, long time. And if you go put conduit or make a developer put conduit in a subdivision, they won't use that conduit. So it's kind of a struggle with the industry.
Have we buried everything that's under our control to bury? Have we reached out, and I believe the answer to this is yes, well, I'm asking, have we reached out to the service providers and asked them to bury their lines?
Have we gone back to the service providers and asked them to take their existing cable off of there and put it underground? I don't know that we've called each one of them and asked them that. I already know the answer.
We're just talking about Suddenlink and Liberty. I just telephone as well.
Suddenlink, CenturyTel, you have Lightspeed, you have all these different, you have numerous different small companies, big companies that have zero interest in spending the money when they're already making money and putting it underground. It doesn't affect them at all, and there's no motivation and or incentive for them to do that. So we don't really have a lot of sway over that because there's just no incentive whatsoever to get their cable out of the air and put it underground.
To get the poles taken down, the poles are not theirs, the poles are Liberty's, 90% of them. So once you can get rid of the electric, then they have no leg to stand on, I guess you could say, and then the poles could go away and then they would have to go underground. That was my understanding when we talked to Liberty a long time ago.
I know we've still got several steps to go here, but that has to be climbing the list of priorities.
I don't think there's anybody sitting here today that doesn't want that same goal. So,
thank you, sir.
I can speak to my property only, which I own. The distance from the pole at the corner of 2nd and Brick to where my electric comes into my building. I spoke with Empire Electric 5 years ago about me burying that or having that buried. That short distance, which is 50 yards, was going to cost me close to $80,000. That's why it's still up there. So, I mean, it's a hugely expensive process, and they're making money off me regardless, so they're not going to do it for me. I would have to pay for it.
Can I ask a follow-up then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we have something in place to at least, because over the years, right, the downtown central business district will expand, you see that grow up, blah, 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 right? Is there something in place to make sure new lines are buried as we continue to expand the square over the years?
On the square, I mean, there's nothing that's buried now, so they're not going to, I don't believe that Liberty has anything in place that requires it to be buried, or nor do we enforce that on Liberty.
So this will just kind of be one of those problems that grows until the day we decide that.
Yeah, because if it's in the air already, they're not going to put it underground. They have some weird law or requirement that it can't, it's a long story, but
Can't play with other stuff, right?
yeah.
Well, it can't dip in and dip out, and dip in
Yeah.
and dip out. So it's all based on your transmission line. We've done a lot of work with Liberty over Empire and Liberty over the years that we don't have any individual information, but at the same time, we definitely know where those circuits start and stop. And so the best you can do is go out and identify, say, here's a pole, or here's some vertical infrastructure. And you look at that vertical infrastructure and you might be able to say, there's 3 lines there we might be able to get down. But again, if there's multiple carriers, if they're making revenue off of those multiple, telecommunication services, they have to go back and they have to get all of those people to go around. There's just no incentive, so, even though there's a lot of federal dollars out there for rural broadband, there's nothing out there to get stuff like that.
So I will say that last year that we sat down with Liberty and we came up with a phased approach to downtown getting it put underground. And what that is you have your main transmission lines and your feeders coming off of those and then working from dead-end lines and working your way back. It's just at that point, once we got so far into it, we realized that we just didn't have the funding to do it and we weren't going to receive funding help from Liberty to do it. It was going to be all on us to get that taken care of, so that kind of hit a wall.
This is an example, it's not correct if I'm wrong, I think this is one of our samples, we went from the corner right after you're up the street.
Up Brick. Brick is a main transmission line, and then coming off of it, there's a feeder line, and that would be the first one, I think, is what you're talking about, the one that comes off Brick. That feeder line is 2 poles, and you would feed 4 houses or so, and that was this first section. Then you would feed the section off the south side of Brick, and then you would do that, and then you would slowly work back. But as Mayor Jackson said, his one little section was 80,000. You can imagine how fast that can add up.
This one was close to $2 million.
Yeah.
Just this one stretch.
Yeah.
Mr. Campbell?
I'm an advocate of sleeving under new paving and all that. The question I had that popped up in my mind was, can you run fiber with power in the same sleeve or conduit, whichever you want to call it?
Well, no, you can't.
I didn't think so.
Now, fiber's not, there's no wire. It's just something that transmits light. So it's not interfered by power being close to it or anything. But typically, you want at least a 2-foot clearance between any high voltage and any other conduit for anything else, whether it be fiber or anything like that. So typically, as long as we get a foot variance or something like that between it, usually it'll be fine. But it just depends on the power.
Okay.
Whether you're doing CU or Liberty and their requirements.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, was what you said. I just wanted to make sure. But does it make sense to run 2 sleeves under those places instead of 1?
There's no,
Because of that, and like I say, it may never be used is the thing.
yeah,
But if it ever is needed,
there's nowhere that we didn't run multiple conduits. There's some places that there'll be 6 to 7 conduits going underneath the street just to be safe. Better safe than sorry, because at the time that we put this bid packet together, PVC was fairly cheap, but it has went up in price, but it's still cost effective to do it now and not tear up a brand new street 2 years from now because of we didn't do our due diligence. So.
okay, I think you're right.
One thing I was going to say that's of note is like if you're dealing with city utilities, they'll let a electrical contractor come in and bury what we call primary lines and secondary lines and do all that stuff and work with the CU on that, where they may come and set transformers and all that, but everything's self-performed by outside contractors. The difference between that and Liberty is they will not let anybody touch any of that. So they want to self-perform everything. So when it comes to the primaries or transformer pads or any of that stuff, they dig it all, they put it all in, and there's obviously an uptick in the price that comes along with it versus what you can work out with CU, where if you wanted to bury some lines, they would say, well, this is what it's going to cost for us to set our transformers and do that, and then you can, self-perform a lot of it.
Absolutely. You want to flip your mic back on?
So, but in my mind, it would still make sense
it still makes sense to, if we had those buried conduits or sleeves, whichever one you want to call them, it would still make sense to do that, to bury those.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's going to be cheaper for Liberty to do that work when time comes, if time comes.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the board? There is no one on Zoom any longer. Anybody in the audience wish to speak on this topic? Hearing none, Mr. Gardner?
I'll move Bill 3274 on the second reading by title.
Motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Campbell to place bill number 3274 on its second reading by title only. All those in favor?
An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a contract with Capital Paving and Construction LLC for certain street and sidewalk improvements.
Any additional comments from the board regarding the bill? I just want to, for the record, I'm extremely excited because for years, when I was the mayor and on the board of aldermen, we really pushed and pushed and pushed to be able to spend money on infrastructure, even back when we had no money. I remember 2009, our annual street maintenance budget was $100,000. That's all we had available to spend. So to think that we can go out and be able to pull off a project like this on streets that haven't been touched, except for to be cut and cut and cut with the utility issues that now we have new utilities under the ground as far as water and sewer. This is extremely exciting, and I think it's a great use of taxpayer money.
Add one thing to that, and I've got to say, it's all because the citizens supported the first ever transportation sales tax in the city of Ozark to make very large projects happen. Without that, small towns like ours can't do it. All the big projects you see, it was the citizens coming and saying, we want to do this, and I'm just very appreciative that they trusted in us enough to give us the chance to spend their tax dollars wisely. So maybe they'll do that again, who knows, but we hope to continue this progress.
Absolutely. Mr. Galloway, do you have a question, comment?
No, just a comment. I wanted to compliment Public Works and the city in the level of communication that they're undertaking to let the people that will be affected know about the project. That's really impressive. Those cards, the QR codes, I really appreciate it. I also know that Public Works has been attending meetings with business owners and representatives of the community at the Historic River District meetings to communicate step by step as they put this plan together. I really appreciate that as somebody who offices and owns a building downtown.
Anything else? Hearing none, Mr. Gardner?
I move we put Bill 3274 on the second reading by title only.
We just did that a minute ago. Would you like to adopt it? You're so excited. All right.
We adopt Bill 3274, orders 21055.
Second.
All right. The motion was made by Alderman Gardner, second by Alderman Galloway to adopt bill number 3274 as ordinance number 21-055. May I get a roll call vote, please?
Poston. Rick Gardner. RJ Flores. Heather Alder. Eddie Campbell. And Bruce Galloway. Motion carries.
Perfect. All right, now we're going to go back into resolutions. Mr. Flores.
I move that we place resolution 1960 on its first reading.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Poston to place resolution number 1960 on a reading by title and description. All those in favor?
A resolution approving 3 reappointments to the Board of Adjustment.
All three of these members have previously served and their terms are expired on the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. They all three have agreed to continue to serve the city of Ozark in this capacity. Does anybody have any questions with regards to the resolution?
I move that we adopt resolution 1960.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Poston to adopt resolution number 1960. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Second reading, final passage of bills. Mr. Campbell.
I move that we read bill number, I move that we have a second reading and final reading on bill number 3269. Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Campbell, seconded by Alderman Poston. Place bill number 3269 on its second and final reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into an intergovernmental law enforcement services agreement with Christian County.
Any additional comments by the board regarding this bill since our last meeting? Hearing none. Mr. Campbell?
I move that we adopt bill number 3269 as ordinance number 21-056. Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Campbell, seconded by Alderman Poston to adopt bill number 3269 as ordinance number 21-056. May I get a roll call vote, please?
Rick Gardner. Heather Alder. Nathan Poston. And RJ Flores. Motion carries.
I move that we place bill 3270 on its second reading by title and description only.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner to place bill number 3270 on its second and final reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance approving the State of Missouri cooperative purchasing agreements.
Any additional questions or comments since our last legislative session with regards to this bill? Hearing none.
Move that we adopt bill 3270 as ordinance 21-057.
Motion was made, pardon me, by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner to adopt bill number 3270 as ordinance number 21-057. May I get a roll call vote, please?
Bruce Galloway. RJ Flores. Heather Alder. Nathan Poston. Eddie Campbell. And Rick Gardner. Motion carries.
All right, that concludes the second reading and final passage of bills. Moving along to report of officers, boards, and committees. City Administrator, Mr. Childers.
All right. If we had anything to do, I do want to congratulate you and the Christian County Football Club for putting on an amazing event this weekend. I was down there sweating, not working with you, but with my daughters, and we had a great time at the Blue Boat. Crazy busy, and the next day was the same. So, great event, great for the city of Ozark. So thanks a lot for all the hard work that you guys do. I know it takes an awful lot of people and a lot of volunteers. So I hope it raises a lot of money. And even though I didn't win the car, I'm not mad. I did buy that. So,
Well, thank you for the compliment. I do have an amazing team of club members that help put that on, put in countless hours throughout the year in the planning process. A lot of people don't realize that we start laying the groundwork and the planning in January, 6 months. Each member probably puts in 250 up to 500 hours worth of work in the planning and the actual event. And our goal obviously is to raise money for children's charities here in Christian County, but we also want to put on a awesome community event that people can take pride of. We feel that it is a added amenity, quality of life amenity for our community. And when you walk through the crowd and you see the smiles and the kids having fun, and it makes it all worthwhile. So thank you for the compliments. I will pass that along to the rest of the team.
I mean, I don't know whether the club members or whether the, park staff does it, but when I drove into town this morning, along Riverside Road, I didn't see any trash. I mean, I saw it in the, the dumpsters and stuff, the little white cups and napkins and everything else. So it was cleaned up pretty quickly by somebody.
We start on site Thursday morning at about 8 o'clock in the morning, laying the groundwork for the infrastructure. We stopped at about 10 o'clock Thursday night, reconvened Friday morning, laid the rest of the infrastructure, let the vendors in, started the event, left the park at about 1:30 in the morning. We were back at 6 on Saturday morning, left the park after picking up all the trash at 3:30 a.m. Sunday morning, Father's Day morning, and came back down at 9 o'clock to make sure that we didn't miss any. But the park staff does a fantastic job of picking up behind us, making sure that everything is properly taken care of. And, I want to commend the city staff, the ones that were available through their normal work activities. Our police department makes sure that traffic flows smoothly through the city of Ozark, and they should be commended. The park staff were down there doing their normal activities, and they should be commended. They really help us out a lot. So I don't know how many people were there, but I guarantee you didn't sit in your car for an hour and a half trying to get in or out, because our police department did a fantastic job. It also helped the Riverside Bridge was open to funnel traffic that direction, but they did a fantastic job. All right. Ms. Payne, did you have anything? Just a written report? Perfect. And Planning and Development Director, did you have anything other than your report?
Just having any questions.
Perfect. Any questions for him? Ms. Alder?
I just, on the commercial trade permits, explain to me what that is. I was curious because the city, Ozark Dog Pound's listed under commercial trade permit.
Trade permits are items such as if they just want to do some framing work inside of a building or electrical or plumbing. It's not a full building permit for a new building. It's just a remodel, or again, just pulling in an electric wire box or adding a sink. Or
can you share what they're doing to the dog pound?
I don't know specifically what they're doing. Is this the city dog pound? When you say
It's
dog
the
pound.
City of Ozark Dog Pound
So
was issued a commercial trade permit.
I cannot answer that specifically. I wonder if it's one of the buildings down at the treatment plant possibly that they're doing some work on, but.
Could be, I just don't know.
Yeah.
Too many permits to,
I can look into that and get back with you for some details on that. And it may be that when they apply for a trade, such as if it is electrical, we may not actually have drawings. It's just that they may be going in and doing some modifications.
upgrades or
Yeah,
adding outlets or painting the lighting,
Yeah.
things like that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any comments from the board? None? Motion to adjourn? Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by which Alderman was it? Mr. Campbell, seconded by Alderman Campbell. All those in favor?